We back with another one. Welcome back, y'all, to a Purpose Served podcast episode. For those of you that are new to the podcast, this podcast is about simply inspiring you to create with whatever means or resources that you have, with the intention with improving the human experience and also, innovation to the human experience. Um, for those of you that's returning to the podcast. Thank you. I appreciate it. Tuning in to yet another one. I believe this is 55, which is Condo D. Shit's kind of crazy. Hold on, I gotta change something real quick. Right. But yeah, did y'all hear Kendrick Lamar's new album, Mr. Morel and the Big Steppers? Now, it's something about that album that is going to go over a mad people head due to the fact of the content. And to be quite honest, I'm not. This may not go for all of y'all, but some of y'all fucking attention span is mad short. It's really really short. That's a huge issue. You know what I mean? And it was one of those albums. It was so densely compact with so much that is going to be here this week. I think it dropped this Friday. And then after that, ain't nobody going to be talking about that album. And I'm guaranteeing in the next week or two, ain't nobody going to be talking about it. But it was a masterpiece, man. It was a masterpiece. I was going to make a podcast 2 days ago, 3 days ago, talking about it because I found the album for me very, very, very relatable. And for anyone that's, living in this world and going through the shit that we're going through right now, it should be relatable to you as well. The reason why I'm saying that is that it tackles a lot of things from social media. It was one song on there called Worldwide Steppers. To me personally, that was like my favorite song on a whole entire album. You know what I mean? And the context of that song was pretty much saying that everybody's a killer, man. You know what I mean? And majority of us are not out here physically killing people, but we some silent killers, man. Killing people with silence. You know what I mean? And it ranges from all aspects of killing. Killing a woman's confidence by simply using the word bitch. You know what I mean? Keep calling her that. Then what's going to happen? You know what I mean? You're going to kill her confidence. You're going to have her looking some type of way about herself. And then after that, with the social media platforms, you can cancel people. You can make, you know what I mean? There's so many things that's out there that's currently happening. You got people that took their lives, killed themselves because of the bombardment of what other people say, cyberbullying. You know what I mean? And that leads to them taking their lives. And there's people that are going through that currently right now. But um, it's crazy that when you look at people like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, artists, or anybody in the entertainment, business or celebrity, they don't get looked at as a human being. You know what I mean? They get looked at as like an idol. They get looked at as someone that's above you when they bleed how you bleed, feel the same pain that you feel, and have the same emotions that you have. They deal with grief, and it's something that uh, I like to talk about being vulnerable. And this dude Kendrick put himself out there in a real vulnerable state, talking about you know, in a black culture, in a black society, what our fathers mean to us. Um, to be quite honest, you know what I mean? We how can I put this? Being black in America is a very, very, very challenging thing. You know what I mean? You don't understand the world that you live in and the history that's behind the world that you living in until a certain age, and depending on where you live at is very apparent. I grew up in Newark, you know. I grew up in the hood. I grew up, you know what I mean, with my mom raising me majority of the time. And it's not like I didn't know my father, you know what I mean, or he wasn't present in my life, because he was here and there, but due to the situation and everything that's you know that's wrapped up in it, you know what I mean? It's a lot of things that can leave you being a statistic. And going back to my previous podcast episode, the one talking about my mother, and what she's been through, you know, generational curses are real. And in Kendrick's album, you can see how that's very apparent. You know what I mean? How the things that's around you, your environment, can shape how you ultimately grow up and how you ultimately gonna end up shaping out when it's all said and done. And that's not necessarily has to be the case, but you make it your own destiny. I was talking to my brother uh, recently, 3 days ago, because there's a lot of things that's been heavy on my mind. And when talking to him, you know what I mean. And shout out to Devin, love you, bro. But the one thing I was talking to him about is something that I'm starting to understand, and trying to. I'm not even going to say try anymore, and I'm gonna explain why later on in this podcast. But just to get to the point, I was telling him that attention leads to intention, and wherever your focus is at, that's where your energy is going to go, and that's where most likely your actions is going to gravitate to, and your priorities is going to spring out from where your attention is at. And like I said, attention leads to intention, and it's so many different things in my life that helped me ultimately realize this, you know, and the one being obviously basketball. My attention and my focus was dedicated to the game of basketball, and it got to the point where that's where my intentions was at too, you know. And going back uh, to high school, you never know how things is going to transpire and how it work, but you know, life is weird in the way that it presents struggles to you, but in a way it's meant to make you stronger if you overcome them. You don't know where it came from or anything or why it happened, but oftentimes it's one of those situations where you got to work yourself, you know, backwards into the problem that you found yourself in. Now, I never described to y'all the process of when I tore my ACL in high school, my junior year, and how significant that was in my life and my development, being 17 years old, just turning 17. Um, I had just earned the opportunity after grinding my ass off all summer, pulling up to my middle school, which I talk about, which is like a mile away, from my house. That was the mile and a half there and back. That's 3 miles on my feet, and I'm doing two practices from 8 to 10, and then from 10 to 12, just to come back and practice again. Um, at the court around the corner from my house. Basketball was 24/7, nonstop. That was all that was on my mind. That's all I wanted to do, and since like I said, the attention leads to intention. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get good enough to play on my high school team. At the moment, that was my primary objective. Like that's what I was playing for, to play on varsity. You know, I got that chance. I got that chance going into my junior year. We was playing in the fall league, and it wasn't going too good. Not how I expected. We're getting blown out pretty much all the games. Like the school I went to, we was pretty shitty. We sucked. Um, and we oftentimes was that team that another team is looking at us like, yo, how much are we gonna win by this game? They chips. You if you guys ever play sports and you look around at your competition, sizing them up, and you're like, oh, I could take him, I could take him, I could take. Oh, this is looking sweet. That was pretty much us. I didn't carry myself like that. You know what I mean? But that was just the vibe that we gave off. And there was one game in particular against Lenape High School. We're down by like 30, 40 points. I'm not having a great game at all. And it's probably like a minute left in the game. Going on a fast break, I go up, left hand, and somebody's coming to block my shot, trying to send this shit into oblivion. Avery. uh, and Avery was 6'2", linky, athletic ability. He was pretty nice, you know what I mean? Shout out to Avery. I was just hooping in the same league with him the last time I played ball, which was last summer, like in a league or whatever. I got a game not too long ago, but it's only for a replacement. But this is my first time playing, basketball under the whistle since last year, since I decided to take a break last fall. But I go up on this fast break, and we he bodies me in the air, got contact. I made the layup, but while I was coming down on my right leg, I tried to turn at the same time, and go. So I'm plinking and turning at the same time, and I dropped where I landed, and it felt like my whole entire leg was on fire. And I'm sitting there, I'm holding my leg, and I'm like, yo, this this is the worst pain that I ever felt in my life. And they're telling me, like, you know what I mean? Stop holding my leg. And I'm like, yo, I think I broke my leg. So I get taken to the hospital at the time, and they get an x-ray on my leg. It says that nothing's broken, but at the same time, it's like something's up. I can't walk. And eventually, I went to my athletic trainer at my high school. Shout out to Cat, but he's testing out my knee. Now, for those of y'all, if you feel like your knee, you tore your ACL, this is what he did with me. He like kind of shifted my leg, shifted the top lower part of my leg and the upper part. Now, what ACL is, if I can remember, is an anterior cruciate ligament. That is the ligament smack dab in the middle of your knee that's giving it that flexibility to go, like, you know what I mean, move it back and forth. But there, for me, he was just like, you completely tore it, because you're not supposed to be able to shift the leg like that, left and right. It's just supposed to go like that and stay locked in a place. But mine was like wiggling. And he was like, yeah, there's no cartilage there. And at the time, this is starting for me at 17 years old, starting to understand right then and there what was going on and trying to process it. And he was telling me that I would have to get surgery, and I would have to miss the basketball season in its entirety. And mind you, the season will start for like another month. This is October, a month and a half. And I'm like, what? Like, it's nothing I can do to recover in that time, because I'm starting to feel like, as time goes on, I'm gonna get better, and I'm gonna be able to walk since my leg's not broken. And he said, nah, this is gonna require surgery. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you're gonna have to learn how to walk again. So getting this, having this information, me receiving this information, I'm like, yo, there's no way. There's no way in hell. And I had a doctor, Dr. Marchetto, and I remember, I think he was the Eagles doctor at one point that checked them out. Um, Went to him and did the same thing, and he was like, yup, you didn't partially tear it. Ain't no cartilage there. I got an MRI. That sucked, man. You got to go into this machine, and you can't move. or else it don't really get a good picture or a scanning of what your knee is. So you gotta sit completely still in some in a tube looking thing. You know what I mean? That you like slide right in. You know what I mean? And you can't move. Really, really uncomfortable. And then after that, I had to get the surgery, and I was mad shook. I was shook for the reason being I never got surgery before, especially for my knee. I'm looking up mad YouTube videos, looking at how them surgeries go and how they work, and I'm like, what? That's what they're gonna be doing to my leg, yo. But it was the aftermath that affected me more than anything. I wasn't expected to be out that long away from the game. I couldn't practice. I couldn't play. The only thing that I can do was just sit around and watch. Now, after my surgery, I remember the first game that I went to. My brother Devontae took my spot on the JK NBA team, and there was two things. When I first had to find out that I was going to be missing the time that I was, and I had to get surgery, I cried at the doctor's office, and then I cried in my room, sitting in the dark, mad, sad boy vibes. And I also cried when I was at the game because it hurt me so much, man, to to put in that much work and that much dedication, and for it to feel like it would be sabotaging, especially with it being my junior year of high school and it feeling like that's like the most pivotal point in my life, you know. And this is something that I want you guys to think about when you're thinking about whatever it is that you're going through right now. One of the things that the athletic trainer told me, Kaplan from my high school, he told me that either your leg is going to be stronger than it ever was before, it was going to be weaker. But you during this whole process is going to be the deciding factor of if that's going to be the case or not. And you have to listen to every single thing that I say. And I'm like, all right, cool. I can do that. I can do that. And eventually, I'm doing physical therapy pretty much um, like 4 or 5 days out of the week, and it's really intense. From God honest truth, trying to learn how to walk again. You know, you develop muscle atrophy from not using your leg for a certain amount of time, and my leg was like pencil thin, and I had absolutely no strength in it. You know what I mean, and no mobility. So I had to develop that strength, and you know what I mean, maintain a balance with my left and right side. I couldn't straighten out my knee, or lock my leg out. You know, it was always slightly bent, and the pain and discomfort that I constantly felt, it was it got to the point where a lot of times it was overwhelming and sent me down some depressive rabbit holes, man. On top of um, trying to figure out what am I gonna do from here with this game, you know. And this is all the early C's, which eventually, you know, led to the other things transpiring with me being in college and me eventually dropping out, which led to me playing basketball overseas, you know, and playing professionally. And it's something. A lot of these things that move us come from a place where there is no separation. It felt like at the time, you know, with me going through that, you know, there was a separation from me and my goal and what I was trying to do, but there really wasn't. And there really hasn't been this whole entire time. And that goes for y'all that's listening or maybe watching this as well. You know, you get these things that's coming from a source, like I always talk about, that's beyond our five senses, that's beyond um that's beyond the realm of, you know, physical matter. You know, there is something that, you know, you think about, like, for example, just to help you guys understand this, you got on, you got off, you got hot, you got cold, you got light, you got dark, you got all of these things that distinguish one thing from another, but it's not really separate in itself. And this is how you got to think in order to connect with whatever purpose that you have. And the source is trying to tell you and guide you, and you must listen to it and trust it, you know? And this comes from a place where, like, for example, attention leads to intention, but what really is attention? You know what I mean? You paying attention to something, focusing on something, but what really is focus? What's making you attentive to this thing? You know what I mean? It's something within you that's drawing you to that, to start being more aware of that, to start wanting to know what that thing is about, you know, and really doing whatever you can to make it bring it to life. Now, for me, what I wanted to bring to life was playing basketball at the highest level that I can possibly play it, simply because I love playing the game of basketball. Now, a source, that led me to connecting with that was, like I said, you guys don't know me. I love basketball, and what drew me to it was me being fascinated and awed by the people that was playing it. That, like, for example, my prime example was Kobe Bryant. Um, and his message was Mamba mentality. Be the best version of yourself that you can be, which ultimately led me to start in Purpose Serve, because it was something that I used that resonated with me, which I didn't understand the source of where it came from, because it was deeper than basketball that drew me to basketball. If you guys catching what I'm saying, you know what I mean? It's feelings and emotions that's connected to certain things that you want to do, and you have to listen to it. You have to obey it, and you have to follow its simple instructions to bring it about, you know. And all of this stuff, this podcast, this platform, and all of these things was in a different dimension, in a different place first, but it needed certain things to happen in order for it to take shape. And wherever, that place is no bounds, and that's why I mentioned on and off, hot and cold, because the source, it emanated from that. And what I mean by emanated is just that it came from something else. That's not the original source. It emanated from something. A flower is not the original source. The seed is. You know what I mean? But you don't see the flower when you see the seed, you know? And a lot of us have a lot of seeds within us, but they are waiting to become flowers. You don't see that's a flower, you know what I mean? But it's something inside you that know, like, yo, I'm a flower. I'm not no freaking whatever it is that the world is trying to get me to be, and you have to follow that. It's your obligation to follow that, unless you want to be a average ass Joe and not make a difference in the world and just sit around and watch life just go by. Go right ahead and do that. That's mad. That's a waste of time, and that's a waste of existence. You know what I mean? And I'm not sorry about saying that. I'm really not. Um, you got too many people that's out here that's suffering, that don't know the truth, and it's being hidden from them. And also, you got people that's out here, like, similar to me, that's out here that are trying to shed light on these certain things, because I'm getting derailed from my thoughts moving too fast. But um, with all of that being said, the one thing that led to me starting Purpose Served, another reason, was my basketball journey in itself. My basketball journey um, consisted of me feeling like I didn't have the proper resources that everybody else had, and I was always behind the ball, the behind the curb, and everybody else had, like, you know what I mean, a dad that was really invested with them playing basketball, parents that's willing to take them here, trainers, coaches that's invested in their journey and their growth with playing basketball. And I'm looking at what I don't have compared to what they had. And also, that was another thing that made me work as hard as I did, and which ultimately led me to this point, um, to build a platform to help people make their own platform and leave their own mark and help others that's in need, but also to help the ones that's in need have a platform to reach out to have the absolute help that they need. You know what I mean? So Purpose Served is about, having something to stand on to, like I said, further the human experience through innovation and improvement. That's the constant quest. That's how we made it here, man. Is because of the innovators and the ones that was deeply focused on how we lived and how to make it more easier for us to live. I mean, you do have some shiesty ass people out here that don't give a rat's ass for improving the human experience, but keeping us enslaved, which is partly the problem, majority of the problem, which is something I'm going to speak on in the future. But right now, I would like to dedicate this last little bit before I got to head out of here to the people that have amazing platforms right now that I'm aware of, that was a part of this podcast and a part of Purpose Served. Of course, somebody that I mention all the time, Michael Settle, and his fitness brand, man. It's amazing to see, man, and see the impact that he's leaving and what he's doing, especially, you know, black dude, man, and very young at that, just got his degree. Shout out to him, man. I definitely got to go back to school, but for right now, his deuces on that. Oh, shout out to Joanna if you're listening to this. I seen that you just graduated as well, man. Shout out to JB, Joanna Banana. But also shout out to Aqua and Wave Entertainment. He got something crazy cooking on. If you an independent artist, man, please reach out to Aqua, man. At Aqua underscore NJ, man, and Wave Entertainment. He's definitely putting on the sound for underground Jersey artists and independent artists at that, and trying to start a whole movement, man. Not trying. He's starting, and also Grace as well with what she's doing with her. I can't put it in the box. You know what I mean? I just seen a post with her recently with her talking about her meditation practices and mindfulness, and it's definitely bigger than meditation and mindfulness. You know what I mean? That definitely helped me practice compassion, which is something that I had to develop with what I'm doing. I'm still cutthroat. Don't get it twisted. I ain't sweet. I ain't sweet. But yeah. Shout out to Grace, man. Um, awesome, awesome, awesome. What else I was lastly gonna say? Food for thought for y'all. There's a difference between trying and doing. There's a difference between trying and doing. If you're going to do something, you're going to do it. If you're going to try to do something, you have some intent of failure behind it. No cat. I wanted to make a podcast, so I just made it a podcast. I wanted to make a website, so I just made a website. I didn't try to make a podcast. I didn't try to make a website. I didn't try to play basketball. I just did all of those things. I simply just did it, you know? So eliminate trying, man. You low-key increase your chances of failure by doing that. It's them word games, man. It's them word games. It's them mind games that we constantly play, in our head, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But start encouraging yourself with, knowing that you can do something, not just simply trying. You know, y'all more capable of than what y'all think. Make like Nike. I ain't even gonna finish it. Y'all know the next three words. Serving is an action. Treat the purpose as if it's the goal. Serve your purpose. You already know how that go. You know, short, sweet, to the point podcast episode today. I gotta head out of here. I gotta get buckets. And thank you guys for tuning in. Love y'all. And last but not least, deuces.